Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and thank you as always to Bold Brave Television Network for having me. Today we bring you part 3 of our series on surviving narcissistic abuse. We've had a couple great talks in the last couple shows, and we talked in the first show, part 1, about narcissistic family systems. I have a light shining on my face. Sorry about that. It's from my window, the beautiful sun. I'm so happy for it. So we talked about narcissistic family systems and what it feels like when roles are placed upon children, forced upon children in those family systems, and also the behaviors of narcissistic parents. So if you haven't seen that already, please check it out. That was Talks with Tracy number 19. And then last week, we brought it into the discussion into adulthood. And we talked about how when we come from systems like that, how that actually plays itself out in our relationship experiences in adulthood. So that was Talks with Tracy number 20 again. So if you haven't checked that out, please do so. I also talked about shame in that show, and I talked about how it's human poison and it's one of the number one weapons used by narcissistic people in relationship. So yeah, check it out if you haven't already. Now today, I am starting by asking the question of, can you do self-care when you're in a relationship with a narcissistic partner? Is it a thing? Is self-care a thing? Well, yeah, you can do self-care, but do know that there may be hell to pay if you do, because what is self-care about? Self-care is about taking care of ourselves, um, bringing ourselves to a place of being the healthiest we can be, doing things that empower us, doing things that make us feel great about ourselves, working towards that place of loving ourselves. That's what self-care does, right? And that does not work for a narcissist. That when you're feeling great about yourself, you're less likely to allow yourself to be dominated and controlled, and you are more likely to stand up against somebody devaluing you and degrading you. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who has narcissistic traits, you may find that when you do self-care, that they will not support it, they'll poo-poo it, they'll talk down about it, they'll criticize it, or maybe you'll have to pay a price for them allowing you to do it. There's a transactional flavor sometimes. Or maybe they'll want to try to control that experience for you. So maybe they'll want to start working out with you so they can know who you're around, or, how exactly you're feeling about yourself. And maybe they'll have a great workout plan for you, and they'll want to tell you how to do your self-care. Those are all things that kind of come with it. And honestly, when you're experiencing it that way, it just takes all the the goodness out of it, and you don't even want to do it anymore. So which is likely the agenda of the narcissist. So you won't do it. So, I guess there can be self-care, but it just doesn't feel like positive self-care, and it's not something that you can really do for a long period of time, because it just is too much work, and it there's too much of a cost um, that is that comes. It's too expensive emotionally, so to speak. All right. So, it's interesting to note that the core belief of a person with with narcissistic personality traits, the core belief is that of not enoughness. And that is based, it creates a base of insecurity and shame. And I was talking to my sister Martha the other day about this. They're not born like this. This is something that is created, developed out of, from the same place that the rest of us have our own personality traits developed out of. It's developed in experience, childhood experiences. And, all of those childhood experiences that are logged into our subconscious mind, and all of those emotions attached to those childhood experiences that drive us forward in the world, they are no different. That's where these narcissistic personality traits come from. And most often in adverse childhood experiences, like experiences of neglect, of disrupted attachments. As human beings, we all need at least one person to securely attach to, who will emotionally meet our needs. And when you don't have that, when you're tossed around between caretakers, when you're neglected, when you're abused, um, all of those things, you don't have a secure attachment. And as that experience, it plays itself out into your adulthood, you can develop personality traits that are narcissistic in nature as a result of that. So they're not born this way. It's all from experiences and emotions attached. And uh, one of the traits that comes with it, though, is a real lack of self-awareness about it. People with narcissistic personality traits, they don't have insight. They don't have self-awareness. They don't realize that these are traits of theirs um, that are not healthy traits. They're maladaptive and often rigid personality traits. And they're also so uncomfortable with their own insecurity and that sense of not enoughness, that as soon as they feel their insecurities, their shame triggered, they will deflect that away, and they will place that shame on others, and often the most painful and even abusive ways. So, you know, so what we're talking about today are personality traits. It's a grouping of common traits that are common to this narcissistic personality type. So do know that this exists on a continuum of severity. The mild end of a narcissistic personality style would be somebody who is emotionally immature, superficial, self-absorbed, annoying. That would be on the mild end. And then on the severe end are really frightening people who can be sadistic and exploitative and really terrifying. So we're going to, most people fall in the mid range of this continuum. And those are the people we're going to be talking about today, and traits. And also remember, people can have any combination of these traits that we're going to talk about. They don't have to have all of them. They can, everybody's their own individual, and everybody has their own personality, and can have some, just a few, all of these traits that we'll be talking about. All right, and I'm anticipating also talking in terms of romantic relationships today, but do know that these kind of personality traits can be seen in all sorts of different relationships, like friendships, relationships in the workplace, and certainly romantic relationships. I myself have experienced this, people with narcissistic personality types all across the board: friendships, workplaces, and romantic relationships. So I have quite a bit of experience in that way. So, and unfortunately, it actually, most often we learn about narcissism and narcissistic abuse after having experienced it, after having been hurt by it. And I am no exception. So, another person who has also had a considerable amount of experience with this is my partner today, Ash Benavides. She has a lifetime of personal experiences with this. She's actively doing the healing, and she has educated herself on this issue, become, in my opinion, kind of an expert on things. And in her own way, and she's actively changing these patterns in her life, and she's helping others to bring awareness to this and change patterns in their lives. So she is the person that I am so very thankful to partner with in this endeavor. And I'm so happy to have her here today. So please join me in welcoming the beautiful and amazing Ash Benavides.
Hi.
Good morning. Hi, how are you today?
Oh, good.
Good, good. So glad to have you here today. So, uh, you know, you heard my introduction, and, both of us, we're both very kind of perfect examples of people who have been hurt by narcissism and have educated ourselves in the process of doing our own healing. It's a narcissism. It's a maladaptive and often rigid personality type that has these different traits, and often the more maladaptive a personality type is, the more rigid it is, the harder it is to change. And so there's different traits that go along with this. So what would you say, Ash, would be kind of some telltale signs of that somebody has these kind of narcissistic personality traits? Like, what have, from your experience, what would you say some of those are? And I have a whole list to go through, but I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I think like one of the first things that we can say that they all have, and I have, like I mentioned before, three bases I look for when I meet people, connect with people. And the biggest one that sticks out is zero accountability. They just, the minute you bring up anything, an
Mm,
issue, a concern, you can do it nicely, you can do it however you want, they instantly flip it and deflect it.
Now
Um,
that's related to their insecurities and their shame, right?
yeah, yeah.
Being triggered.
There's no
Yeah.
ability to sit and, oh, well, let me work on that, or I'm sorry that I came off a certain way, however that is, but they're instantly jumping to, well, you did this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Right.
one of the things I notice. And I feel like one of the personality things that even in my interactions with spiritual narcissists or covert, overt, they all have a base of negativity. Everything.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because when I say negativity, it's like that's such a huge statement, but it seems like everything in their world, the underbelly of it is negative, right? So I'll use a spiritual narcissist for example. Like they're constantly on this quest of spirituality. Everything you
Mm,
do during it has a meaning. And then like if you don't do it the way they feel needs to be done, you're out of line, right? You're not on that hot holy train or whatever. Um Anything that doesn't mesh in their spiritual beliefs is bad, which leads me to you're either with them or you're against them, which is another narcissistic, like obvious. It's black or white.
mm,
There's no research. There's no like openness to these people whatsoever.
mm,
And that's something that really sticks out is those two. And then no matter what I tell people, and people will reflect on this, you're always confused. Like I've met narcissists the first 2 hours. I'm like, what? Like I just feel deeply confused in their presence. And those are usually my three very obvious, strong. They all share this. One doesn't not have it. The other does have it. They all have it. It's just how they
mm.
portray it.
Right. In that kind of my way or the highway attitude, that speaks to the trait of, superiority, of grandiosity. They kind of they don't like to be wrong, right?
Right.
So they are not open to other ways because they know the way. When you're talking about spiritual narcissists, it's so interesting to me that somebody can say they're a spiritual person and have narcissistic personality traits, and that is one of those things to look like that to look for, that my way is the best way and I will teach you, that,
Right.
yeah, that superiority, that it's egocentric is really what it is. And they tend to like to hear themselves talk,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. Or they'll I had one of my partners of 3.5 years, and I grew up with horses, and I feel like as a trainer, I'm always learning. But he, who had no real experience with them, would try to overmind my knowledge. And it was very frustrating. And because it's like, I'm the kind of person that'll step back, but I don't want my horses getting harmed,
Mm.
or like, not the correct way. And that was really difficult. 3.5 years of constant, just like, deep breath, walk away, because this person, I could tell immediately, he felt threatened by my knowledge, and he was uncomfortable with it. And it was bizarre to me. I didn't understand. I was like, "What? Like, you have your skills. I have why is this an issue?" And again, when you don't know about narcissistic people or their behaviors, again, it goes right back to confusion, right? You're like, "I don't
Mm.
understand what's happening now. Why am I feeling completely confused? Is this my fault? Am I doing something wrong?" You kind of put yourself down, because these people are so good at, well, gaslighting.
Gaslighting, that's a perfect topic. We will start our next segment with that. But I just kind of want to point out too, you're using the example of your knowledge with horses, and um, your former partner happen to like be the one who knows more about those things, and you happen to take a deep breath and step back, but not wanting your horses to be harmed. We can put that in the context of parenting as well. And oftentimes, like, we ourselves will put up with a certain amount of maltreatment and abuse, but then when we see it harming and affecting our children, that's when things get less tolerable, and more difficult, because a lot of times it's easier for us to protect those who we love, children, horses, than ourselves, because of our own, maybe lack of love for ourselves. So I would love to start our next segment, Ash, with that thought about gaslighting, and talk a little bit about that and what that is and why that's used, the intention behind it. So we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll pop right back in there. So you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont. Coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I have Ash Benavides with me today as my partner and talking about narcissism and narcissistic abuse. Before the break, we were just getting into the topic of gaslighting. And I'd really encourage viewers, as you're listening to this, just kind of think about these personality traits in terms of your own relationships with people you're in relationship with. Both Ash and I have said that we were super confused in these relationships, and we didn't really know why things were happening the way they were, and we didn't know what narcissism was. We were living within the midst of it, but we didn't know what it was, and it really came after we were hurt by it, our awareness and educating ourselves and things like that. So as you're listening to the show, just think about people in your life, and ask yourself if these kind of people with these personality types are part of your life. As human beings, we're not meant to be devalued and degraded and dismissed and blamed for everything and made to feel like we're not enough. And if that's your experience, then that's a problem. So Ash, you had mentioned gaslighting before we cut to a commercial. You want to talk a little bit about what that is and why it happens?
Gaslighting. I feel like narcissism and gaslighting has really become the 2023-24 model of the year, and it can be overused. But gaslighting, the basis of it is like it's like a stem off of confusion, right? So anything that a person does in a narcissistic relationship, there's a manipulation happening to think that you're the problem. Everything is yours. So if we're going to break it down in layman's terms, it's like the basis of doing a manipulation tactic, which can be so many different varieties, to make you feel like the bad guy. The ultimate goal is you're wrong, I'm right. And that's
Mm-hmm.
it. There's no in between, there's nothing. This is how it is. And so that's kind of how I look at it in a basic term. I mean, gaslighting is such a broad spectrum, but I mean that's what we use that terminology for when you're feeling confused and in the state of, I'm going to go here because this is new for me not to do this. I'm sorry. I feel like my whole life, whether it was a friend or a lover, was I'm sorry. And because when you're being manipulated, because they're so good at this, you think it's your fault. You think you did something wrong. And it doesn't matter what it was, whether it's parenting, horse training, maybe your dinner making, maybe it's talking to someone in public. Everything is made to make you feel like you're less of a human being, which is what they want. They want you to feel as awful as they feel. That saying, misery loves company. I would like to allude that to the narcissist loves company.
Yes, and again, it all gets back to that deflection, right? Where they feel not enough, they don't like that feeling. So if you say you hurt me, you did this and you said this to me and that hurt me. Well, they can't sit with that. They can't do what a healthy individual would do and be like, okay, well, I'm sorry about that. Tell me how I hurt you, and be accountable, like you said, and take responsibility. What they do is they just want to push it away, and then they do things like gaslighting, where they make you the issue and they make you to feel like something's wrong with you, right? Like there's literally something wrong with your thinking. You're too sensitive. That I didn't even do that. And there's a lot of denial, and yeah, it does. I've had many people come to me who are in these kind of relationships and ask me if they're the narcissist,
Right.
because everything's been so twisted around in their minds that, and I always tell them, if you're asking me if you're a narcissist, then you're likely not a narcissist.
Right. I think
Yeah.
I've
And
asked times.
yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of um, just they don't like to be told what to do. That's another thing that can really trigger their insecurities, right? So there's a lot of controlling kind of behavior that can happen in all of this. Did you ever experience it? Well, I guess, you were talking about the horse training where your former partner was trying to tell you how to interact with horses. That's kind of a superiority controlling kind of thing.
A lot of another thing that was controlling with my partner, and he was really he was really charming. Everybody liked him. And it was difficult because when people would say, "Oh, he's such a nice guy," every single time I was like, "You don't know what he's like at home. Like, what?
Mhm.
How is this person this way with these people, and then at home it's awful?" But one of the controlling things he did do, and someone pointed it out to me, is he isolated me. The
Mhm.
narcissist will find a way to isolate you. And again, I've now had like realizing I've had spiritual narcissists in my life, tons of those, and then friends and partners. They really want to suck you in, and by isolating you, they have the ultimate control. Um,
Mm.
Almost 4 years, I didn't have friends. I didn't talk to my friends. I didn't
Mm.
socialize, and do it in a very interesting way. My partner at the time was like, I just really don't want people over. I just want to come home and not have to deal with your friends. And I was always so happy and silly and just wanted, if people wanted to come out and have a fire, fine. But I went with that. And again, narcissists are so, they're like, their skills are so diverse that, with him, it was like a slow taking the chain away from me, right? And I think that more grandiose or external ones are real quick, because I've learned
Mm.
in quest of being mindful of the narcissist behavior is you can't always tell. Sometimes it takes a minute or a couple months, and the
Mhm.
ones that are really skilled, your best way of finding out is, what is their history report with their friends and their lovers. Go with lovers. So let's say it's your girlfriend, because I had to get rid of a friend of over 20 years, and yeah, she's got all the traits. But all her relationships were like bad. And it was their fault. Like, they do this and they do that and they do this. And even in my own healing, I had to watch myself. Like, what? Okay, so I've been with narcissists, but I wasn't always with narcissists. So how do I share my story without sounding like everything is their deal? But one of those things
Mm.
of the control is the isolation. And then, of course, as we go into like the traits, the love bombing, they can really pull you in with all kinds of stuff and make
Mm.
you. And again, I can't emphasize this so much. The narcissist and the empath come from the same household. One went one direction, one went the other. So for someone
Mhm.
that's a victim to narcissistic abuse, they're probably trying to people please. They want to feel validated and loved, but they're not doing it in a manipulative way, in a very like toxic way. They're doing it in a way of like, well, if I love this person and care for them back, maybe I will be valued to them, because that's
Mhm.
something we forget, is that these types of people, and not everyone is an empath that's with a narcissist, is coming from that. But those two particular people come from trauma, and I think that's the thing that we forget to look at, is like, it's sort of like a dance, or as I've said before, shit show. like, like how it works is really not a healthy dynamic. And in the end, like for me with that partner, I didn't realize he was a narcissist until I realized he was a narcissist. And I was like,
Mm.
there's no way. I didn't see it. I didn't see the slow. He was so smooth and good at it. But every
Mhm.
time, again, another thing people forget, your body's going to tell you. People don't
Mm.
sleep adequately. People might get sick all the time. This was my case. And your body will hold the score, as they say in a book title. Like, if you listen and you're not feeling good all the time, that is your body saying run, right? From It's
Mhm.
a fight or flight mode
Mhm.
type thing with animals. So, but yes, I have experienced it in different ways, and it's just, which is hard because I'm kind
Yeah.
of a free spirit. You can't control a free spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yet you found yourself, even with this beautiful free spirit, you found yourself being controlled and isolated. And I completely agree with what you're saying, that is to isolate you is one. strategy to maintain control. And that kind of gets back to that self-care talk that I was saying. A narcissistic person, they don't want you to feel really good about yourself, and they'll devalue any attempts to feel good about yourself so that they can keep you in a low place where you're easier to manipulate and control. So they lack empathy as well, and they can even kind of fake empathy a little bit, like they can engage in a conversation about how your day went, and they might listen to a point, but in short order they'll check out and they'll go back to being absent, because the fact is they don't really care about how you're doing. They can play the role for a little bit, but ultimately they really don't care about how you're doing. They have their agenda, and that's why things can feel transactional in these relationships as well, where okay, I'll let you do this, what are you going to do for me? Those kind of and it is sometimes, I mean, you can be in these kind of relationships and these dynamics for years and years and years, be caught up in them. They're really hard to get out of. I want to talk more. You mentioned love bombing. When we come back from our break, I'd love to start there, talk about the relationship, the narcissistic relationship cycle that involves love bombing, devaluing, discarding. So I'd love to start there when we come back. We are going to break for a commercial real quick. So you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. We will be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy, with me, Tracy Claremont, and the beautiful Ash Benavides. We're talking about narcissism, and narcissistic abuse today. And before the break, we mentioned the term love bombing. I have experience with that. She has experience with that. So I would love Ash to pick up right there and talk about what is love bombing and what's the intention, what's the motivation.
Love bombing is like, I meet you and I'm like, you're amazing. It could start with like the words and then the stuff, right? I mean, again, the spectrum of love bombing is so wide, but the basis of it, if we look at it again in layman's terms, is like in a very short window, you've become godlike or goddess-like. You are this really superhuman person. And then when you scale back and you're like, I'll give an example. My longest relationship with a man, within 2 months, he wrote me and sang on a video a love song, like he was going to marry me. And I remember I was out with my girlfriends. I was like, too soon? Like, I've been dating this guy for 2 months. Like, what, we're getting married? Like, okay. So that was a way to be like, hey, I think you're amazing. I need you. I want you. And again, like, we'll go into friends. Like, friends are like, oh, you're such a great friend. You're there for me. Here's a token of my affection. Stuff. And we'll go back to my dad. My dad was a stuff giver, right? My dad was like, I will reward you with money and gifts if you basically worship me. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that's what they want. They want you because you're whether you're grade A material, grade A supply, or just good supply because you're a loving person, they want you to worship them. So love
Mhm.
bombing is basically the hook with the bait to catch the fish.
Right. Oh, I love the way you put that. I totally agree. So now this occurs in the beginning of a relationship, and then it can play itself out for weeks, months.
It can,
Um,
love bombing can play itself out for years. As long as the narcissist has you, they want you. They
mm,
absolutely want to keep you because you're fueling their inadequacy. I'll give a prime example that I was doing for years, whether it was friends or my partners. You're so amazing. You're handsome. It was like I felt like I had to like serve these people, like every day, like remind them that they're a good person. It was exhausting. And so as long as that narcissist feels like a special human to you in your reality, you're filling a cup. But the problem is that cup has no bottom. So it doesn't
yes.
stop. It just keeps going and going and going and going. And the love
Right.
bombing,
Right.
sometimes when it fizzles, let's say the relationship gets a little relaxed or the friendship, then they'll throw the hook out again and love bomb
Right.
you again to kind of keep
Yeah.
you in the zone, right? Paying attention to this
Yeah.
person.
So I just got a message from Caleb, the engineer. He's asking you to maybe turn the speaker down on your phone because there's a little feedback. Can you do
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
All right, awesome, thank you. So absolutely, I agree. And when you say the love bombing can continue on for a very long time, then I think it's a cycle, and the narcissistic relationship cycle really is a cycle of love bombing, and then when they got you hooked, and they can sense when you're hooked, when you're committed to the relationship. Once they have you hooked, then the climate changes. It goes to a climate of devaluing, and the devaluing stage, it involves a lot of minimizing you, ignoring you, kind of making subtle or even obvious jabs at you, uh, kind of maybe showing disapproval, whether it's verbally or with expressions, that look of disdain, that makes you feel like you're to blame, or you've done something wrong, or you're not enough. Like, this treatment, like you don't matter, what you want, what you need, what you think, none of that seems to matter. And that goes to that devaluing kind of place in the relationship. And that feels really awful to a person in a relationship. And I like what you said about how, when you feel like you're disappointing someone, like you are not living up to somebody's expectations, like when you go to that not good enough place, then it's easy to fall into this pattern of I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and trying to make them happy, you know
Right.
when but it's just a futile effort, because as you try to reach that bar of happiness, their happiness, the bar gets lifted every
Right.
time.
Right.
You never reach that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I said, it's a bottomless cup. And I think what I see in devalue stages, the devalue happens when you are no longer useful. Again, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're sustaining the narcissist, they're going to keep you. But the minute you aren't, I'll give an example. My last partner, he would say really ridiculous stuff. Like one time he's like, "Baby, does it bother you that my hair's longer than yours?" And I'm like, "I don't care." Like it just, these are subtle comments he would make because I wasn't stroking his ego, because he looked like something off of, like, he looked like a, a lot of people thought he looked like Jason Momoa, right? Which comes with a price tag. If you're dating someone that's like extraordinarily handsome, it's like a high maintenance thing. And so I was in my own little world. I was still healing from a previous relationship, focused on the horses, focused on my job. And I didn't give him that acknowledgement. So the minute that happened, for example, like the biggest thing they do is they sabotage any holidays or festivals. They're always ruining stuff. But I left. I left him and I went on a trip, and he was completely okay. But at the same time, he had to sit with himself. So then he wasn't okay. And I
Mm,
wasn't there to like boost his ego. So then what happened was he left. He's like,
mm,
"I'm done with you." Because I wasn't there to sustain that. And again, prior to knowing about narcissistic abuse, I'm thinking like, who wouldn't want to stay on a horse ranch and like play with horses and like chill, Like I'm thinking this is the greatest life ever. And no, for narcissists, it's very scary because they're used to having supply, right? And so
mhm,
that's when the devalue happens. As long as when you cut off supply to them, whether you find empowerment or you're focused on yourself or you're doing anything for you, that's the devalue stage. But I think the
mhm,
love bombing in that previous stage, a narcissist would rather stay in that space with you. That's a safe space. They basically are using the heck
mm,
out. And then they don't want to get to devalue, right? I feel like that's my experience. They don't want to like have to like cut you off because hey, it's a free
mm,
ride. It's free love, it's encouragement. Maybe you're paying for everything. Maybe you're taking care of the narcissist on all levels, like whether it's male or female. It's great, right? So who wants to lose that? The minute stuff gets questionable, that's when they're going to start doing the devalue stage.
mhm. And with the love bombing, I do think that love bombing is a lot of work for a narcissistic person. It takes a lot of effort, and it's hard to sustain over a long period of time, especially if it's insincere. And again, when I do feel a narcissist can sense when a person is when their partner, their supply is like all in the
Right,
relationship. And then they feel like a certain amount of comfort where they can be like,
right,
oh, all right, I can sit back. I don't have to put all this effort and energy. I can kind of sit back into my own. You did mention that a narcissistic person can look one way out in public and different in private. And you mentioned how your former partner was pretty charismatic and everybody thought he was a great guy. And then behind closed doors, he was different to actually live with. When a person with these kind of traits feels that level of comfort, like, oh, okay, yeah, and that can come with, maybe you buy a house together, that
oh god.
that's pretty locked in. Maybe you get married, that's locked in. Maybe you have a child together, that's locked in. Those are times when a narcissistic person can kind of sit back and be like, oh, okay, I can be more myself. I can be dismissive and I can ignore and I can, have disdain for people. And, they actually have quite a bit of contempt for genuine, true emotion. I don't have
Right.
time for that. It's annoying to them. They can slip into those kind of roles. And um, I appreciate what you were saying about the discard, where if you do start to, rise up against or stand up for yourself, then that discard comes quickly. It's kind of like, I'll show you what it's like to live without me, you know?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then
And that
they
discard
wait.
does come fast.
hmm And then they look for opportunities to, any kind of sign that you're sorry, or like, why did you do that? Or what happened? Because there's that confusion again.
Oh yeah.
And they,
Yeah.
and then it can start the whole cycle over again with the love
Yeah.
bombing. And that can
Yeah.
go on for years and years.
It can. And I think too, something I've noticed because I've had experience since I went down the rabbit hole of learning about narcissistic abuse is I
Mm-hmm.
sometimes wait for the narcissist to show back up in my life. And you know what? They do. Whether it's a girlfriend or an ex-partner, boy, they circle back around because you're a list of supply. It's like going down a list of like actual suppliers for maybe your business, right? And maybe this person ran out of something you need, so you're going to call the next person, right? You're going to go down the list because you are
Mm-hmm.
now alone. That is a remarkable place for a narcissist is when they're alone, oh, they lose it. They can't handle it because you have to sit with yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
now with you. So, that's again where they love bomb you. I'll give an example. A girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, it's been over a year, circled back around in my DMs on Facebook, was like, hey, what's your address? I want to send you this denim jacket you love. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, I was very strong and very polite. I was like, our friendship is done. I appreciate the offer, but I'm doing my own thing now because I saw the same patterns, not only in men, but in women. So
Mm-hmm.
friendships, lovers, you start putting them all together and you're like, oh boy, they all have these similar traits. This is not good. And so that was an example of the love bombing, right? Or I had a kind of a quick ex fling soon after my car wreck, and he keeps circling back around, bless his heart.
Mm.
He sent me a song. And my response was, what happened to the girl you were just seeing? Like once you become really skilled at seeing what they're trying to do, like, can I hook her?
Mm-hmm.
Can I hook her again? Can I love bomb her? Here's a really amazing song. Will she listen to it? It was a great song. I said, thank you. And then I was like, what happened? What happened to the last girl? And there's no
Mm-hmm.
response, right? Because you're kind of calling them out. If you start calling narcissists out, oh, they don't really like that.
Mm-mm.
So they'll, they'll, they'll
No,
either,
and
they'll either attack you or they'll slip back, like, ooh,
mm-hmm.
it's kind of like a snake, right? To bite you.
And this is exactly why we're doing the show, to draw awareness of these patterns, of these traits and things like that, so you can have that awareness and not get caught back into those ways and whatnot. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this up in our next segment and kind of talk about how raising awareness can help us to stay out of these devaluing, degrading, unfulfilling kind of relationships. But first, we're going to take a quick break. So, you're watching Talks with Tracy with Ash and Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with myself, Tracy Claremont, and the beautiful Ash Benavides. We've been talking about narcissism, traits in narcissistic personality types, and we're talking about the relationship cycle that goes along with these kind of relationships. And I'd really like to say, in our just closing minutes here, I want to remind people that there is no reason to allow yourself to be hurt in the name of love. If you're being hurt, that's not love. And you don't have to stay in those kind of relationships. It may require some kind of intervention. If you're in these situations, it might, therapy might be helpful to help you begin to really put your own thoughts and feelings and self first, and really start valuing yourself after you've spent so long being devalued and mistreated in relationship. And you know, when you develop self love and when you develop self compassion, that is really like kryptonite against a narcissist, right? Once you develop that love and compassion for yourself, you'll be able to stand up for yourself better and say, I don't want to be treated like this. And, then you can decide whether or not you can kind of use that radical acceptance. This is what it is. This is who he is. This is who she is. And decide whether or not you want to stay in that or you want to change that. But do you agree, Ash, when you start to develop your own love for yourself and look inward, then, that is like kryptonite to a narcissist?
It absolutely is. I think not just self-love, but if you kind of throw it back at the narcissist, they don't like that. You just hold up a
Mm-hmm.
mirror. And I think, like, if there's people that are in these relationships and friendships, the best thing that helped me was I started researching how to deal with a narcissist, how to live with them, how to,
Mm.
how to interact with them. Because I kept seeing in my life patterns, over and over and over and over again. So, and yeah, self love can be really difficult to find if you've spent your whole life, or let's say you're in a marriage of 15 years and you're just so at
Mm-hmm.
that rock bottom. But my best advice would be, like, one of the things that saved me was one of my best friends. And she was the one that
Mm.
coined the knowledge of narcissists to me. And I would reach out to my two girlfriends that were in other states and basically vent and sort of expose what was going on in my life. And I think when
Mm.
there's, I think, for someone like me who's basically hobnobbed with like 80% narcissists for whole life, there's still 20% normal people. And those normal people were my benchmark to understanding healthy friendships and relationships. Until you can reach
Mm.
out and get help, whether it's therapy, animals, whatever it is, taking a step in the direction of healing is going to self-empower a person. The best thing too,
Mm.
use the discard stage. When they get rid of you, take that window of opportunity to, like, lock the window, right? Like, nope, you're done.
Mm.
We're done doing this. And I experienced that with my longest relationship. It was really painful to close the door and be like, we're done. I'm not doing this anymore. I couldn't. And I left it at that, and I think that's where
Mm.
healing starts, is when you say enough is enough. This I'm going to take an act of, like, take a step away. And I think that is difficult for people that are like, they have children or share a home. But I
Mm.
again, I to, like, as what you're saying is, like, it's not worth it. That's not love. It's not worth wasting your life staying in these types of dynamics, because you're better off wherever, whether you get an apartment or you stay with friends or however that looks. You're going to find happiness and love for
Mm.
yourself, and no longer be the narcissist's slave, as it were.
Yes, and I love that that's a perfect place to start, just like you said, going to friends who you can really speak in a very truthful manner about what your experience is. Healthy friends who will support you and give you that, reflect back and really like be in your corner. Now, also remember that your narcissistic partner is going to hate those friends, right? They are not going to like those people who give you power, but that's okay. Those people are important to you, and that's a great place to start in shifting the dynamic, and then building up to a place where you can, if you choose to get help from professionals or other people, or maybe you just want to listen to podcasts and educate yourself and gain your own awareness of all this and work on that, go into that place of self-love. So, um, there's a saying, I think it goes, you'll create change when the pain of staying is worse than the pain of creating the change, right? That's when, shifts happen. And I think that's a great place to start, and healthy relationships, they involve love and equity and respect and compassion. And if you need to come from a place of compassion, you can even leave a narcissistic partner from a place of compassion, and hope that your leaving will move them to a place where they get help for themselves and change their behavior patterns. Not likely, but if you need to come from a place of compassion, maybe that's a place to start. So I really appreciate our conversation today, Ash. Thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here. Next week, we're going to tackle the question, can they change? We're going to look at that. And then we're also going to look at things that, like, ways that we get involved in these relationships, how we fall into these things, and how we can get out of these situations. So that'll be our show next week. Please join us again next week for that. Thank you so much for watching today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.